All right, so today we're diving into some pretty heavy stuff. Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning.
Oh, yeah.
And, our listeners want to understand how he found meaning in the Holocaust.
Right.
Developed logotherapy.
Yeah.
And we're going to try to pull the most impactful insights from these excerpts and the preface.
Okay.
Frankly, it's about way more than just surviving a concentration camp. It's about how we find purpose, even when things are unimaginably tough.
What's really fascinating is that Man's Search for Meaning has resonated with millions of readers since it was first published.
Yeah.
Frankl's ideas about our need for meaning are just timeless. He believed that finding meaning is actually our primary drive.
Oh, wow.
And this is the core idea behind logotherapy.
Okay.
It's not just about looking back at your past, traditional therapy.
Oh, right.
It's about moving forward.
Okay, but before we get into the, nitty-gritty of logotherapy, we need to understand who Frankl was and how he ended up in a concentration camp.
Yeah.
It wasn't exactly a planned career move, was it?
Yeah. Not at all. Viktor Frankl was a Jewish psychiatrist in Vienna before the war.
Right.
He actually had a visa to come to the United States.
Oh, wow.
But decided to stay with his parents.
Yeah.
Tragically, they were all sent to Auschwitz.
That decision alone speaks volumes about his character.
Yeah.
But I have to ask, the conditions in the camps were designed to dehumanize people.
Right.
How did anyone come out of that experience with any sense of hope, let alone a new theory of psychology?
You're right. The conditions were horrific.
Yeah.
Forced labor starvation, the constant threat of death.
Right.
Prisoners were reduced to numbers.
It's just awful.
Frankl himself was prisoner, #119,104.
Wow.
Imagine the psychological impact, the initial shock, the ever-present possibility of suicide, the emotional numbness.
Yeah.
It's hard to imagine finding meaning in an environment designed to strip it away.
And speaking of having things stripped away, there's this really powerful moment in the book where Frankl talks about his manuscript.
Right.
The scientific work that represented his life's work. And he managed to sneak it into Auschwitz.
Yeah.
You'd think he'd find some comfort in that. But then another prisoner, an older man who'd seen too much, looks at it and basically says, "This is worthless."
It's such a pivotal moment because it symbolizes the complete loss of everything Frankl once valued.
Yeah.
His entire world was gone.
Wow.
He had to adapt to a brutal new reality where simply surviving was a victory.
Yeah.
So the question becomes, how do you find meaning when everything you've built, everything you believe in is ripped away?
That's what I find so intriguing.
Yeah.
Frankl found meaning in the most unexpected places.
Right.
A beautiful sunset, a shared piece of bread, a moment of humor with a fellow prisoner. These small glimmers of beauty and connection became lifelines.
Exactly. And this is where we start to see the seeds of logotherapy being planted.
Okay.
Frankl realized that even in a concentration camp, there was still a kind of freedom, not physical freedom, obviously, but mental and spiritual freedom. He held on to the power of love, inner strength, and the belief that even suffering has meaning.
Wow.
This is the core of what he would later call logotherapy.
Okay, so let's dig into logotherapy.
Right.
How did Frankl's experiences in Auschwitz shape this new approach to psychotherapy?
Yeah.
It sounds pretty different from traditional therapy.
It is. In logotherapy, the will to meaning is seen as the primary drive in humans.
Okay.
Not pleasure, not power, but meaning.
Okay.
Frankl argued that we find meaning in three main areas.
Okay.
Our work, love, and even in suffering.
Wow.
He also emphasizes personal responsibility.
Right.
Even in dire circumstances, he believed we can choose our attitude and take a stand instead of becoming victims.
So it's not about lying on a couch and blaming your parents.
Not quite. Logotherapy is less about dwelling on the past and more about using our freedom to choose our attitude and find meaning in the present moment. It's about looking forward.
So how did this play out in practice?
Well,
Did Frankl have success using logotherapy with his patients? Were there any stories that really highlight its effectiveness?
there's a story about an elderly doctor who was grieving the loss of his wife.
Okay.
He was completely lost.
Oh, wow.
Frankl helped him by asking him to imagine if he had died first.
Mm-hmm.
How would his wife have felt?
That's a powerful question.
It is.
It forces you to shift your perspective completely.
Exactly. It's about finding meaning even in loss.
Yeah.
And Frankl has specific techniques to help people find meaning too.
Okay.
One is called dereflection.
Dereflection, what's that all about?
Dereflection helps people break free from obsessive thoughts and anxiety by shifting their focus outward.
Okay.
It's about getting out of your head and engaging with your work, your relationships.
So less navel gazing, More action.
Precisely.
I like it.
Another technique he used is called paradoxical intention.
Oh.
This one is a bit more unconventional.
How so?
It involves confronting your fears head on. Yeah. Imagine someone with a fear of blushing.
Yeah.
Frankl might encourage them to try to blush as hard as they can.
That sounds almost counterintuitive.
It does.
But I guess if you can laugh at your fear, it loses its power over you.
That's the idea. These techniques highlight the empowering message at the heart of logotherapy.
Oh.
Even in the face of suffering and death, life has meaning, and we can choose to find it.
Mm-hmm.
But Frankl didn't stop there.
What else?
He also developed this concept of tragic optimism.
Tragic optimism. How can you be optimistic in the face of tragedy?
Right.
That sounds like a contradiction.
It's not about pretending everything is fine.
Okay.
It's about acknowledging the bad stuff, the suffering, the guilt, the impermanence of life.
Right.
And still choosing to find meaning and hope.
Okay, but how do you actually do that? How do you cultivate that kind of resilience?
Yeah, Frankl breaks tragic optimism down into 3 pillars.
Okay.
First, turning suffering into achievement.
Mm-hmm.
You don't let suffering break. You use it to grow, learn, or help others.
Right.
Second, you take guilt and use it as an opportunity to change for the better.
Okay.
Instead of dwelling on mistakes, you learn from them and move forward.
Right.
And finally, you find meaning in the fact that life is fleeting.
Oh, wow.
This awareness helps you live more fully in the present and cherish what you have.
So it's about accepting the darkness, but choosing to focus on the light.
You could say that. One powerful example Frankl gives is the story of Jerry Long, a quadriplegic, who refused to be defined by his physical limitations. He became a successful businessman and motivational speaker, embodying that spirit of tragic optimism.
That's incredibly inspiring.
It is.
But Frankl didn't shy away from tougher philosophical questions either, did he?
He did not.
He had strong opinions on things like collective guilt and determinism.
Yeah, he did. Frankl rejected the idea of collective guilt.
Okay.
He believed it's wrong to blame individuals for the actions of a group. He also challenged the idea that we're simply products of our biology, psychology, and environment.
Right.
He firmly believed in free will and the power of the human spirit to rise above circumstances.
His experiences in the camp certainly gave him a unique perspective on that.
Absolutely. He saw firsthand that even in the most horrific circumstances, people were capable of incredible kindness, courage, and selflessness.
So it's not about denying the horrors of what happened, but it's also not about giving in to despair.
Exactly. It's about recognizing the resilience of the human spirit, even in the darkest of places.
This is all so powerful, but I'm sure our listeners are wondering how it applies to their own life.
Right.
How can you use these insights to find meaning in your own experiences?
Yeah.
Before we get to that, though,
Okay.
there's one more fascinating aspect of logotherapy that we need to explore.
Okay. Logodrama.
Now, that sounds intense. Is that like therapy meets Broadway?
Well, not quite Broadway, but Frankl did use dramatic role-playing to help patients confront their anxieties and find meaning.
So it's more like therapeutic theater.
What was the goal?
He wanted people to explore different perspectives and work through difficult emotions.
Right. He believed it could help them understand their values and purpose more deeply.
Interesting. Do you have an example of how this logodrama worked in practice?
Certainly, one example involves a woman struggling to cope with the death of her son.
Oh, wow.
Frankl used logodrama to help her confront her grief and find a new sense of purpose.
Oh.
He asked her to imagine being on her deathbed and looking back at her life.
Wow. That's a powerful exercise.
It is.
It forces you to think about what truly matters in the grand scheme of things.
Exactly. And in this case, it was transformative.
Wow.
As she imagined her life from that perspective.
Yeah.
She realized that even though her son's life was cut short, he had experienced so much joy and love.
Yeah.
She realized that she had played a vital role in creating that joy.
So even in her grief, she was able to find a new way to honor her son's memory and find meaning in her own life.
Precisely, logodrama helped her shift her perspective and see the beauty and meaning that still existed even in the midst of her suffering.
It seems like logotherapy is about so much more than just treating mental illness.
Right.
It's about helping people live more meaningful lives.
Yeah.
But before we explore that further, let's take a quick break.
Okay.
When we come back, we'll continue our deep dive into man's search for meaning.
Sounds good.
And explore how you can apply Frankl's insights to your own life.
One thing that really struck me about Frankl's approach is that he didn't believe in giving people easy answers or telling them what their meaning should be.
So it's not about following some predetermined path.
Right.
Or trying to fit into someone else's idea of a meaningful life.
Exactly. Frankl believed meaning is something deeply personal.
Okay.
It's about each of us discovering our own unique values, our strengths, and what we can contribute to the world.
Right.
It's about asking yourself, what am I passionate about? What makes me feel truly alive? What kind of impact do I want to leave behind?
That makes sense. It sounds like a very introspective journey.
It is.
But how do you even begin to figure all that out? Does Frankl offer any guidance on how to actually embark on this search for meaning?
He did. Frankl believed meaning can be found in three main areas. First, creating a work or doing a deed.
Mm-hmm.
Second, experiencing something or encountering someone.
Okay.
And third, the attitude we take towards unavoidable suffering.
Okay, let's break those down.
Right.
What did he mean by creating a work or doing a deed? Does everyone need to be an artist or an entrepreneur to find meaning?
Not at all. It's broader than that. It's
Okay.
about finding meaning through work, creative endeavors, or contributions to society.
Right.
It could be excelling in your profession, volunteering, or simply being a supportive friend or family member.
So it can be about finding fulfillment in the everyday things we do.
Absolutely. It's about feeling a sense of purpose and accomplishment in your daily life.
What about the second area, experiencing something or encountering someone?
Yeah.
How does that lead to meaning?
This one's about finding meaning through relationships, experiences of beauty and wonder, and connections to something bigger than ourselves. It could be the love you share with family and friends, the awe you feel witnessing a natural wonder, or the sense of purpose you get from your spirituality.
It sounds like it's about being present and open to the world around us.
That's a great way to put it. It's about cultivating an appreciation for the simple things, savoring the moment, and feeling connected to something greater than yourself.
And what about the third area, finding meaning in unavoidable suffering?
Right.
That seems like a real challenge.
This is where Frankl's experiences in the camps become particularly relevant.
Mm-hmm.
He argued that while undeniably painful,
Yeah.
suffering can be a source of growth, wisdom, and even meaning.
Oh.
It's about recognizing that even in the darkest of times, you still have the freedom to choose your attitude and find a glimmer of hope.
So it's not about pretending suffering doesn't exist,
Right.
but about finding a way to move through it and maybe even find a deeper meaning within it.
Exactly. Frankl talks about turning suffering into achievement,
Okay.
finding a purpose that gives your pain meaning. It's about recognizing that suffering can actually be a catalyst for growth.
I have to admit, it's hard to wrap my head around how someone could find meaning in a place like Auschwitz.
Yeah.
It's incredible that Frankl was able to do that.
His story is a testament to the power of the human will.
Right.
He didn't deny the horrors of the camps, but he also showed us that even there was a choice to be made. A choice to give in to despair or to find a way to rise above it.
To find a reason to keep going even when it feels like all hope is lost.
Precisely. And that choice is something we all have regardless of our circumstances.
Mm-hmm.
Frankl reminds us that we're not simply victims of fate.
Right.
We have the power to choose our attitude and make our lives meaningful.
That's an incredibly empowering message.
It is.
But it also feels like a daunting challenge, especially in today's world.
Right.
There's so much chaos and uncertainty.
Yeah.
It often feels like meaning is something we have to fight for.
That's a great point. We're bombarded with messages telling us to focus on ourselves, to seek pleasure and avoid pain, to chase wealth and status.
Right.
It can be hard to find meaning in a culture that often seems to value superficiality over substance.
So how do we resist those messages? How do we find meaning when it feels like the world around us is pushing us in the opposite direction?
That's where Frankl's insights become so relevant.
Okay.
He reminds us that meaning isn't something that's just handed to us, it's something we create.
Mm-hmm.
We have to take responsibility for our own lives, choose our attitude, find our purpose, and find a way to contribute to the world.
So it's about pushing back against those prevailing cultural norms.
It is.
About defining what truly matters to us, even if it's different from what everyone else seems to be chasing.
You got it. True. Meaning isn't found in material possessions or achievements.
Okay.
It's found in our relationships, our contributions to society, and our experiences of beauty and wonder. It's about finding that spark within ourselves, that sense of purpose that drives us forward even when things feel meaningless.
Frankl even used a phrase,
He did.
pre-reflective axiological self-understanding, to describe this. It sounds pretty complicated,
It does.
but what did he actually mean by that?
It does sound a bit intimidating.
Yeah.
But it boils down to the idea that each of us have an innate sense of values.
Okay.
We have a kind of inner compass that guides us toward what is good, true, and meaningful.
So it's not just about figuring out what you want to do with your life,
Right,
but about making sure your actions are aligned with your deepest values.
exactly. Frankl believed that our values aren't random or subjective. They're a fundamental part of who we are.
It's like he's giving us a blueprint for living a more authentic and purposeful life.
Yeah.
But how do we actually tap into that pre-reflective axiological self-understanding?
Yeah.
How do we access this inner compass?
It's a journey of self-discovery and reflection. It's about paying attention to what moves you, what inspires you, what makes you feel truly alive.
Right.
It's about asking yourself those big questions. What is my purpose? What do I stand for? What legacy do I want to leave behind?
It sounds like it's about learning to trust your gut, your intuition.
Yes. It's about trusting that inner voice, even if it leads you down a path less traveled.
Mm-hmm.
Frankl believed we all have this potential for meaning within us waiting to be uncovered.
Right.
And that's just the tip of the iceberg.
Yeah.
There's so much more to unpack in his work.
I feel like we've only scratched the surface. What are some of the other key concepts we should be thinking about?
Well, one that stands out is self-transcendence.
Okay.
Frankl argued that we find true meaning not by focusing inward, but by connecting with something larger than ourselves.
So it's about getting out of your own head and looking beyond your own ego.
Exactly. It could mean devoting yourself to a cause, serving others, connecting with nature, or pursuing a spiritual path. It's about finding a sense of purpose that goes beyond your individual needs and desires.
It sounds like a powerful antidote to the self-centeredness that can be so prevalent in our culture.
Absolutely. And then there's paradoxical intention, which we touched on earlier. Remember, it's about confronting your fears head on, using humor and reverse psychology to break the cycle of anxiety.
It's about turning your fear on its head and saying, I'm not afraid of you anymore.
You got it. And finally, I think it's important to remember that meaning isn't just about those big life-altering moments.
Okay.
It's also about finding joy and purpose in the everyday, ordinary moments of life.
So it's about appreciating the small things.
Yes.
The simple pleasures that make life worth living.
Exactly. It's about savoring a beautiful sunset, having a meaningful conversation, feeling grateful for a warm meal, or just enjoying a moment of quiet solitude.
Right.
It's about cultivating an attitude of gratitude and appreciation for the gifts we often take for granted.
This has been such an eye-opening conversation.
It has.
I'm already feeling inspired to take a closer look at my own life and see where I can apply these ideas.
Yeah.
But there's still more to uncover in Man's Search for Meaning.
Absolutely.
When we come back.
Okay.
Let's wrap up this deep dive with some final thoughts and takeaways for our listeners. You know, it's really striking how relevant Frankl's work still feels today.
Yeah.
You know, it speaks to that universal human search for meaning, something we all grapple with.
Right.
No matter our circumstances. It's that age-old question, what's the point of it all?
Yeah.
Only amplified in today's world.
You're absolutely right. In a world that can often feel so chaotic and overwhelming,
Yeah.
Frankl's message of hope is more important than ever. He shows us that even in the face of suffering and loss,
Right.
we still have the power to choose our attitude and find meaning in our lives.
He reminds us that we're not just passive passengers,
Right.
but active participants in shaping our own destiny.
Precisely. We have the freedom to choose how we respond to whatever life throws at us. We can choose to give in to despair. Or we can choose to find meaning and purpose even in the most challenging circumstances. Yeah. It's that choice that truly defines us and shapes the legacy we leave behind.
Frankl's work feels less like a self-help book
Yeah.
and more like a call to action.
I agree.
He's challenging us to live more consciously and purposefully to make our lives matter.
I think that's a great way to put it. He's urging us to move beyond simply consuming and accumulating.
Right.
And instead focus on contributing and connecting with something larger than ourselves.
He's reminding us that true fulfillment doesn't come from chasing selfish desires,
Right.
but from finding a purpose that transcends our own individual needs.
Exactly. But that begs the question,
Yeah.
how do we actually find that purpose?
Right.
How do we figure out what truly gives our lives meaning?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
It is.
Frankl doesn't pretend to have all the answers,
Right.
but he encourages us to look inward.
Yeah.
What moves you? What inspires you? What gets you out of bed in the morning?
He also reminds us to trust our intuition.
Yeah.
To listen to that inner voice that guides us towards what feels right and true.
Right.
It's a journey of self-discovery, a continuous process that unfolds throughout our lives.
Frankl's own journey, his experiences in the concentration camps and the development of logotherapy is a powerful testament to the strength and resilience of the human spirit.
Absolutely.
What would you say are the most important takeaways from our deep dive into man's search for meaning?
Well,
what are the nuggets of wisdom that our listener can carry with them?
I think one of the most important takeaways is that meaning is not something that is given to us.
Right.
It's something we create. It's not out there waiting to be found.
Right.
It's something we actively cultivate through our choices, actions, and attitudes.
It's about taking ownership of our lives and recognizing that we have the power to make them meaningful.
Absolutely. Another key takeaway is that while suffering is an inevitable part of life, it doesn't have to break us. We can choose to find meaning and purpose within our struggles.
Well,
even in the darkest moments, we have the choice to search for that glimmer of hope, that reason to keep going.
we don't have to let our circumstances define us. We can transcend them.
Exactly. And this ties into another important takeaway, the importance of self-transcendence.
Okay.
Frankl believed that true meaning is found in connecting with something larger than ourselves. This could be through our work, our relationships, our spiritual beliefs, or our commitment to making the world a better place.
Yeah.
Finding a purpose that goes beyond our own individual needs is essential to living a meaningful life.
It's about recognizing that we're all part of something bigger, something more interconnected.
Beautifully put. And finally, it's important to remember that finding meaning is not a destination. It's a journey.
Right.
It's a lifelong exploration, an ongoing process of discovery and growth.
So it's not about having all the answers, but about embracing the questions and the journey itself.
If Viktor Frankl could find meaning in a concentration camp, imagine what we can find in our own lives.
Wow.
It's an invitation to look for the beauty and the good, to connect with something larger than ourselves, and to make our lives a testament to the enduring power of the human spirit.
This has been such an incredibly rich deep dive.
It has been.
If Frankl's story resonates with you, we highly encourage you to explore his work further.
Yeah.
Man's Search for Meaning is a timeless classic that offers profound insights into the human condition.
It does.
It can be a roadmap to living a more meaningful life no matter what challenges you face.
Absolutely.
Until next time, keep seeking, keep exploring, and keep diving deep.